Bye. Thank you. All right, so let's jump in. I wanted just to ask and make sure that everybody's doing okay with Kajabi. How's it going? Are you able to navigate it easily? Do you have any questions?
I think it works fine for me.
Great.
Yeah, for me, it's fairly simple to navigate. You have it all organized real nicely. Thank you.
Oh, good. Thank you. And welcome, Teresa.
Working well for me, too.
Well, if any issues do arise, let us know, because we definitely can fix them, or so far have been able to fix everything. Also wanted to let you know that all of you now have access to the document generator. I'll put the web address in the chat, but it's basically t2sdocgen.com. When you go there, and I'll do that right now so I don't forget. When you... Oh.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and show people.
Okay. I was like, what's happening? The chat has gone. So when you arrive at the website, you'll have a login page. Your username will be your email that you gave to Adam that we've been registering you with up to now. So you would just enter that in, and your password will be just very simple, 1234. The numbers 1234. You can change that in your profile, so if you want to, you don't have to. And then now you'll have access to that to create profiles. We will cover this a little bit more. We didn't actually set aside a lot of time tonight to talk about exactly how to do this, but luckily there is a video in the T2S resources that does cover how to create some of the reports. So you can create team reports for clients, individual top 5, play around with it, watch the video, ask us if you have any questions. And it's been a really great resource for us, and we hope it is the same for you. Any initial questions about that right now? I know it's kind of new, so you don't have to have any, but it's a pretty robust tool, but you can start with very simple generating top 5 documents for individuals. So I'd say, get in there, and everything's free to create materials in 2018, possibly even going forward. We'd like that. So go in there, create your own, and just sort of play around with it. But once you do get a little bit more experience with this and start giving workshops, you can batch materials and put people in teams and do all kinds of fun things. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we progress, but I just wanted you to know that you do have access to that now. We have our group interactions going really well, so I don't have anything to add there. Do you, Adam?
No, in terms of how the group's been participating and all that, no, I think it's great. Does anybody have any requests or suggestions for improvement? Or just email us or message us. Go ahead, if somebody's going to talk.
Yeah, can you clarify what you're talking about? Because are you in the doc generator for groups or someplace else?
Oh, just back here, our meeting here together, if everything's feeling, can you hear us clearly?
Oh, okay.
Things like that.
Okay.
But definitely reach out to us if you have any concerns or questions. We do have a new person here, so now would be a great time. Adam, you had some specific questions for Teresa that you wanted to hear?
Yeah, you bet. Just where are you? What do you do? What do you hope to get out of the program? Anything you want to share? Anything embarrassing? I'm just kidding.
Thanks. That's a welcoming. Well, hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here at the group. My name is Teresa Kopnicki. I live outside of Houston, Texas. I am a certified career management coach, consultant, and trainer. I've had my business for a couple of years. What's really attracted me to this is I help my clients to connect their passion and their purpose with their profession And I see this as kind of the missing link to help them do that. And I've also gathered this even listening to the today's session. Adam, you've already helped me put the next connection to that, in that helping them align with their authenticity, how they come together. And it just makes so much sense, everything that you said. Of course, as I was listening to this, it was like, of course, I was taking it from job search and in my personal life as well. So I can really see how this can really help them move forward. I'm still, and I know you'll touch on this some more, about why do they call it strengths when it really isn't strengths? Where did that name come from, kind of thing? And I almost see it as almost like, I guess I'm putting my own words on, even though you used words about being talents and stuff. It's almost like, to me, I almost feel like precursor disposition. And I don't want to get ahead of whatever you're going to talk about, but I'm trying to put it in my own reference mind. That's, to me right now, that's the biggest challenge, but I can see definitely how this helps people move forward, and it's like their default settings. So this is great. I'm so excited to be part of the group. Thank you so much.
Oh, good. Well, glad you're here. And yes, we're going to talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. So if that's something that you like, why is it called Strengths and Strengths Finder? Happy to chat about that. And I think that's very, very important to chat about. So definitely want to, these calls are for you guys. So wherever you want to go trumps wherever Felinda and I want to go.
And actually, that's a great question, because it is so mystifying, really. Like, if this is about themes and talents, why did they name it Strength Finder? And interestingly enough, they also recognize that this is confusing, so they decided to change the name, went through a big kind of, I don't know, reorganization, and came up with Clifton Strengths. So we're like, well, that wasn't quite exactly clarifying. So we see where they're going, but I absolutely see how that can be confusing. And Adam, I know you have a lot to say on this topic, so why don't you take it?
Can you guys hear me? Yeah. I'm muting myself because I have a cough and I don't want to cough into the microphone. All right. So very important topic, and it's confused me a lot as well for a couple of years, actually. And it's still confusing people today. And so why is it called Strengths Finder? Well, it is an accurate name. Don Clifton really believed that we could really organize our lives around our strengths. A strength is a level of consistently near perfect. There's two scales, consistency and your level of performance, which a strength would be near perfect. Now, there's some things that if I really, really tried and summoned all my energy, I could do it near perfectly, but I couldn't do it consistently. This is the consistency, and this is the level.
If you want to share your screen, slide 31 and 32 have this formula that
would work even better. Let's do that. Slide 31. All right. Well, actually, let me show this diagram, because it's expressing what I'm talking about right now. Let me share my screen. All right. So here we see two kind of scales, the consistency scale and the performance scale. And in order for it to be a strength, it has to be highly consistent and high level of performance. Now, I could have high performance, but not very consistently. Or I could have high consistency, but very low performance. I could do something quite consistently, very poorly. So high consistency, high performance is a strength inside of a specific activity. So if I can read consistently near perfectly, or if I could bake a cake consistently and near perfectly, or sing consistently or near perfectly, those would be strengths. Now, here's the thing. There's an infinite number of activities in the world. Like, there's just so many things we don't even know of as activities could be activities.
And the ones that are very concrete are easy to name, like baking a cake or, running fast or something. But the interpersonal skills and activities, those are the more nebulous. I mean, consoling somebody, that could be a strength of somebody. It just goes on and on and on. It's fairly endless.
And so no assessment could help you identify your strengths. And this is very important. Don Clifton believed, and I do too, our strengths are invisible to us. They're hiding in plain sight, but we don't see them. So he wanted a way to make them more visible. And he realized that there were a couple of things that contributed to a strength. And so now I'll share the slide Felinda mentioned. Okay, sorry. Here we go. So here we see that a strength is when you have talent and you multiply that times investment. Investment in what? In your knowledge and in your skill. So we see three things: talent, knowledge, and skill combine to allow you to be really good at an activity. So what Dr. Clifton did is researched people to see what kind of talents exist, and he built a taxonomy of talents that is the 34 themes. He really identified over 400 talents that people use regularly in his research, and he clustered those into groups that were related, and those groups are what we call themes of talent. So StrengthsFinder measures your talents, and if you can connect with them and really see how they show up, you can begin to see which activities you're using them in. So if you're doing an activity and you find yourself using your themes of talent, and you find that you've acquired a lot of knowledge around that activity, and you've developed skill in that activity, then you have a strength. And just to use a very mundane example, growing up as a child, I liked sports, but my parents wouldn't let me play contact sports. So my mom enrolled me in a bowling league. Not quite what I was hoping for, but I really loved it. I would read everything I could about bowling. I would read books about professional bowlers. I would read about the history of bowling. I was just naturally drawn to this thing. And then I started off with a 54 average the first time in our league, and I ended up with the highest average in the league by the time we were done. And so I developed skills. And I'm sure I didn't know what my talents were at the time, but I'm sure I used my strategic, maybe my individualization or my input when I was gathering knowledge around it. And I was able to combine them into performance that was pretty consistently pretty good. And so basically, if I were to just sum it up, I would say StrengthsFinder helps reveal your talents, and your talents tell you or indicate where you might have strength, where you've utilized your talents and combined them with knowledge and skill. That's where you're good. If you've had people tell you things like, you're so good at this, and you find yourself dismissing that because you're like, well, it's so easy, that why it's not much of a compliment to me, that's actually where you probably would have strength, because it comes so naturally and easily to you. It can't be worth much, because we're always told that if it didn't require a lot of effort and you didn't suffer for it in some way, then it really wasn't worthwhile. And so that's why our strengths are hiding in plain sight. They're easy for us. We look at other people when they can't do those things, and we're like, oh, come on, it's so simple. Just do this, and then you do this, and then you do that. And those are your strengths. And then Don Clifton believed the more we can harness them and play to them in life, the happier we'll be, the more effective we'll be, and many other good benefits. I didn't mean to go off on that much of a tangent, but I
think that's critical. This one is so critical, because this is how you're going to help clarify for yourself and your clients, because this is where the progress can exist.
Where then does like innate ability come in? You know, like because that's what I kind of hear you describing, but I don't get, to me, I've always been told like that a skill is something you kind of learn, whereas innate ability, you kind of already just are born with it.
Yes. That's what would be more of a talent. Talents are innate. If you try to build up in one of these talent areas, one of these 34 themes, you're probably not going to make all that much progress.
And I'll give you an example. So deliberative is my number 34, the very bottom for me. And, you know, but I have strategic in my top 5. So in some ways, those could look externally the same. Like strategic, I am trying to avoid, you know, wasted effort and pitfalls, but I don't think about it as risk really at all. So if in my progress toward a goal or toward something, if I said, oh, I better stop and try to assess the risk, I'm going to have a lot of blind spots. Whereas if I just relied on my strategic, it's probably going to carry me past a lot of that risk pretty successfully. And so that would be more my innate ability. Now I do have somebody close to me in my life, my partner has deliberative in his top 5. So now I know to ask him, but I don't actually try to really develop that because I don't think about it. Like, it's just almost like it's kind of like sometimes the stuff he says, I'm like, what? So, and you'll see that a lot in people close to you, that they often can really support you. But I do think that, you know, our biggest gains are going to come in developing and using that innate ability or using that talent instead of trying to fight against it and that idea of weakness fixing. There's a lot of wasted effort in weakness fixing and a lot of high momentum when you're applying your talents. So I would actually love to hear some examples from you guys of, like, now that you've seen this and you've heard Adam talk about it, can you identify a strength in your life that applied your talents, that you built up knowledge and skill in, and you now consider it a strength of yours today? Mm-hmm.
I can go. So I had a really good day, and a day where I feel like a lot of my strengths got to get used and talents got to get used. And so I think I've always had, as a child, my parents said I always had a knack for storytelling, not always truthfully, but storytelling. And I see that when I'm presenting, and everything has kind of come together at a point that now I feel like I'm really good at winning the audience and being engaging. And now I really want to look at having more content specific deep knowledge. So, and it's funny, actually, StrengthsFinder is where it said, you know, you might be a good presenter, but make sure you've really dug deep into the material you're presenting on. So today I did a presentation to 50 college seniors on grant writing, and it is something that I have a lot of knowledge in, and I delivered the message, and it went really well, and I had lots of follow-up after about, we did it as a promotion. I was teaching on a subject, but really I was trying to recruit them to become AmeriCorps members, and it worked really well, and I was really proud of it.
That's great. And I can totally see how your themes played into that.
And this is my dog who thinks she needs to be on me right now.
She's celebrating.
She's proud of me too.
Yep.
Yes.
That's great. Well, that is such a great example. Let me just share my screen again because I was highlighting, I don't know if you can see, but as you were talking about that, I was highlighting the themes that could contribute to your ability to tell stories in a compelling way. That would be the activity. And let's say that you can perform that activity at a pretty high level, at a strength level. Why were you able to do that? Well, part of it is, you have some themes that really contribute to it. Communication, the ability to communicate with impact. If you read the description of communication, you'll see like 6 or 7 sentences in Gallup's standard definition of communication. Each one of those sentences could almost be like a separate talent that makes up the cluster called communication. The theme of talent is communication. And underneath there would say things like, you find the right words for impact. That would be one of the things you might do when you tell a story. You create vivid images. You might,
and matching that message to the audience. So someone with communication and maybe not individualization, if they haven't honed their communication skills, they might be less effective at honing that skill, that message to that audience. But you were able to do that. You had the knowledge of the material, but you were looking at like, who is in this room? What do they need to hear? And I know individualization just enjoys that experience usually.
And that
I always say, most people go in and start talking about their content right away. And I always try to find a different way that's actually the background message. But here's what I can give you. Oh, and by the way, this is actually why I'm here.
And I think the self-assurance kicks in as well, because I'm going to be more compelled by somebody that has confidence and exudes it. Whereas if you're like, somebody's like, well, like, and this, and you know what I mean? And does that make sense? And are you guys, like, you're not doing any of that. You're just like, there was once upon a time, there was a little girl. This is what happened. So let's say you were to take storytelling as the activity and that you have as a strength, or maybe you only are competent at storytelling, because there's many levels of performance. If you wanted to go from competent to maybe advanced or to strength, there's 3 main areas you could look for storytelling. You could use your talents, like maybe you haven't figured out how to use your relator talent, or maybe you have another 6th theme that you could bring into bear. Or maybe there's new ways for you to use your maximizer when telling a story. Or maybe you don't do anything with your themes. Maybe you just increase your knowledge. What is it that makes for a good story? What is a good plot line? What are some stories that I can learn and include and tell? And then the skill would be when you like start. It's by the way, let me describe skill. Skill are the specific steps needed to perform an activity. So your introduction, you've realized, is one of the steps for a good story. And then, if you listed out the steps, like how to tell a good story: 1, do a pregnant pause; 2, make eye contact with your audience; 3, lead in with an intention getter; 4, lay out the plot; 5, create suspense; 6, leave them with something memorable. But let's say you never do that 6th step. You never thought of it before. You didn't know that was a step. If you add that step, that'll increase your performance. So you can increase performance in 3 broad areas.
And I also want to add to the skill part, this is crucial, practice. The physical act of doing it, super important, because just thinking about it, often, especially in some of the themes have a tendency to do this, thinking about it is not the same necessarily as practicing it, which is physically engaging in the practice. So you will experience greater gain with just physically putting yourself in whatever activity. And going back to that, a question about innate ability, there is some gray area. Certainly we believe that to achieve mastery in a given activity, you probably do need to have innate ability. You can get really high, you can get advanced, competent in things that you might need, activities you might need that might feel harder. And some people say, oh, you can't even really get to a strength in that activity if you don't have innate ability. I personally feel there's some gray area there, but I do agree that mastery in a given area you do have to have some innate ability. I mean, you look at like the performance level of the top pianists in the world. There are so many people with that innate ability that have put the knowledge, put the skill, but so few reach that level of mastery. And I think that's where that innate ability does begin to separate in those two categories.
Okay, I want to ask a question then. If I may use Lauren's example. So am I hearing you say that if Lauren wanted to be a master in like which, or I'm not saying she's not, but if someone wants to be a master in something, then the way to partly do that is to really incorporate all 5 of their themes? Is that what you all are saying?
Yes, and the more of your themes that are engaged, the easier and more fun it's going to feel. It's going to not feel like hard, like there will be parts of it that are hard work, of course, but it's going to be something you want usually, because it's just going to light up all of the areas for you. So yes, try to engage as many of your at least top 5 as often as possible when you're working to sort of bump up your level on the performance ladder in a given activity.
But it takes all of them too, then the knowledge and the skill. It takes all 3 of them.
Need to add that, because you might, I mean, and you see this too. So there's a great example in, I'm blanking on the book, which I love. It's, it'll come to me. It's a book about talent, The Talent Code. There we go, by Daniel Coyle. And his really interesting example in there are world-class tennis players. So that, you know, most of them are, and especially these very specific, he studied this group of Russian women. And to get to the level they were already on, they had innate ability. But what he was learning and hearing from their coaches, the innate ability wasn't enough to get them to the level of mastery where they could win championships. They had to invest in the knowledge and the skill to hone that. And all of those things had to come into play. And the coach specifically said, you know, I can see sometimes that someone with a large amount of innate ability, they have to have some, but somebody that comes in with a large amount and doesn't think they need to invest in those other areas will not progress the way that somebody else who invests in the time, practicing, skill developing. You know, that knowledge piece is huge because a lot of that would be form. You know, there's some crossover between. So anyway, that is very important. Those other parts of the formula are necessary. And I think that's really important when you're working with a client. That's why we like to spend a lot of time on this. Because if you see your client has this innate ability and is just ready to go, but they don't know where to go, you can help guide them. And we talked about that role of the strength interventionist in our video, Adam did. And that's, you know, and maybe they don't see, and conversely, maybe they don't see their natural ability. So you might be a guide there. You might be a guide to help them improve the knowledge piece or the skill piece. So that is something that you coming in as an interventionist can really help offer a great deal of support. It's a simple formula, but an important one.
It's still a lot of stuff to kind of wrap your mind around. And that's what this course is for. We try to walk through it because the pieces are there. The first piece is activity. That to me is one of the most central aspects of what we're talking about. StrengthsFinder or performance in life is it's about activities, an infinite number of activities that humans could do. Which activities are most important to us in having happiness, meeting our goals, expressing our values, or just activities that we have to perform because life demands us to do them? And that within an activity, there's a wide range of performance, ranging from oblivious, you don't even know the activity exists, up to mastery. It's very rare. Strength is very rare. Dr. Clifton would say for every strength you have 1,000 non-strengths. And, you know, that's still even fuzzy math. It might even be way more. For every strength I may have 72,000 non-strengths. And this ladder here is something we add to the mix because Gallup just talks about strength. That's just one level of performance. It's an important level of performance, but we think that there's a higher level of performance in a strength. And we think that there's a lot of other levels of performance that are viable and relevant. There's activities I'll never be good at. Maybe all I can hope for is to become basic at it. You know, you see, we just fill up the box a little bit. There's some activities I don't even jump into the box. I'm like, I'm terrible at this, and I'm going to stay terrible at it. I have a fixed mindset. I don't want to get good at it, or I don't think I could get good at it. But then there's some activities that I'm like, I want to become a beginner. And so then you jump into the box. You know, you're still empty, but you're willing to seek coaching. You're willing to be awkward. You're willing to learn and humble yourself. And then you learn the basic moves of that activity and you begin to fill up the box. And maybe basic is all you need for an activity. Like, okay, I need you to do this. It doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be perfect. Or, you know what? I need you to be competent at it. I need you to be able to do it regularly without failure, without breakdown, or advanced. And I think you can become advanced with just knowledge and skill. No, you don't even have to apply your innate abilities. But in order to have a strength, Dr. Clifton would say you need also, in addition to knowledge and skill, you need to have talent. Because talent is what makes you passionate about doing it. It's what gives you the feeling of pleasure when you're doing something that it took you a long time. Maybe as a child, Lauren, you didn't like to tell stories. Maybe you were shy. But you had this innate ability and it made you persevere and try to tell stories. And it was just fun for you to tell stories. And it was innately pleasurable for you to tell stories. And so then you add knowledge and skill, and now it's a strength.
Can we go to the contrast alignment meter, slide 18? Because this is, you'll be actually doing a worksheet as homework from today, but I want to talk about sort of what this means. And this is a really, so, you know, Adam said earlier, like often our talents are invisible to us, even the activities, the strengths that we engage in that we're just almost effortlessly involved in. We know that we enjoy them, but often that's just very vague. And so we need a tool to help us identify actually these zones. And just overarching advice, spend as much time in the thriving category with your time as possible and try to offload as much of the suffering of your time as possible. Now, that seems so obvious and simplistic, but I will tell you this particular activity can be very, very powerful because often we sort of accept things in our lives that we just say, oh, well, this has to be done. But the more you can identify these things in conjunction with your top 5, the more readily you're going to have these positive experiences. The more engaged you'll be, the more energy you're going to have, and the more rapport you're going to have with others. So that will help you begin to identify, oh, you know, during the day, and it will have you just fill it out for one day, but I actually would encourage you to really be thinking, like even if you just fill it out for one day, try to keep this in mind as you go through a week or a month. And start to identify when you're thriving, when you're content, why that might be. The worksheet will ask you to identify which of your top 5 are engaged or disengaged. I believe will find some surprising things out about your activities during the day. So, but this is a really simple, useful tool to get at that kind of vague idea of like, well, if things are so invisible to me, yeah, sure. You know, I have input, I enjoy, you know, gathering information. What does that really mean in my life? How do I use that? This is the place you're going to record your activities. And so that leads us to talk about, you know, even though we often want to guide our clients and ourselves to spend as much time in the thriving as possible, and you're going to work on that over the course of this course. We are going to talk about how often someone will come to you or something will come into your consciousness through contrast. You know, when something's going well, I do want you to get better at identifying that and grabbing hold of it. But often your client's going to come to you because they're experiencing some level of contrast. Something's not right. They're suffering, or if they're not suffering, it's only bearable. Something's wrong and they know it. They're not sure what it is or how to fix it. That is not a bad thing. It's often the entry point, but we don't want them to stay there, obviously. So we want you to have a bunch of tools to help get them out of that and over to thriving. But the reality is just that, you know, people don't often seek out help to do something they're already doing well and make it better. So let's talk about that for a little bit. Let me get over to, I believe it is slide 5, please. So in addition to doing the worksheet, which is in the download section, you'll see it. I want you to be thinking of that in this way as well. So I do want you to identify an area of contrast that you're experiencing. Now that you've watched the video, you'll know what how we use some of these terms, and determine what alignment would look like. And that's very, very specific to you. And I would say, you know, if the area of contrast is large, like my job, that's not going to be really helpful to you. So identify something much, much smaller, like what inside the job is the area of contrast. Is it a relationship with a coworker? Is it the job description? What inside that job description? Get as specific as possible and focus on that. Decide what alignment would look like. Then that's where you start identifying the right activities, going back to what we talked about just a moment ago, that if properly performed would move you toward alignment. You're going to think about how your top 5 themes could contribute productively toward that activity, and that's a key word because they can contribute unproductively too. We'll how to make that identification.
Yeah, real quick on that, just I want to say, sometimes you can improve your performance just by eliminating counterproductive interference from your themes. You know, your themes could get in the way, and just by eliminating that, you might improve your performance in that activity.
So this is a lot. I'm giving you a lot. You don't have to go through all these steps, but I do want you to start looking at for yourself how you would practically apply this. There are the 2 more. Identify what you need to know to perform the activity, and list the steps and skills of the activity that you would need to perform well. Now, we have this entering it through contrast. That's not my preference. I would love you to take something you're already doing well and make it even better. It's not typically why a client comes to us, so I do want you to have this experience for yourself in the more typical way you're going to see it, but be thinking of that too. So, you know, back to Lauren's example, she's already experiencing a lot of success in the area of public speaking. So she could actually just change that word contrast to alignment or thriving, and look at how she could actually make that even more interesting to her and even more useful to her in her life. So I'm going to stop there because I do want you to kind of wrestle with this verbally a little bit. I'd like to hear some ideas of where you might start, if you're willing to share.
Teresa, are you saying then that like area of contrast, is that like basically something you're struggling with, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So I wouldn't mind sharing. I did do the exercise, and I looked at something that really worries me is that I've been watching too much TV in the evening. And my love of reading is really, really important to me. And so one of the examples I used was to read less to watch TV less and to read more, but not to spend my time reading workbooks or self-help books, but really be more leisure books, novels. And so I did the exercise using that example, and the alignment would be that I would be reading more, and so I decided that that's what really the alignment would be, that I could say, actually, I'm reading every night. Identify the right activity was I joined Goodreads and their reading challenge, and I said I'd have to read 24 books this year. And I just thought my top themes, my input is really that love of knowledge. So I'm wanting stuff all the time. But sometimes I think it's too intense, and I just need to dial it down a little bit, because I think my themes do kind of rule, especially the input. So I think that was quite interesting for me. And then the skill, the activity would be to research what options to read, to select the right books, because I don't really want to just read beach reads. I still want to learn something from it. I still want the writing to be exceptional. So I'm still pretty selective. And then instead of watching TV every night, I make sure that I'm prepared. My book is next to the bed. Even if my husband still wants to watch TV, that's okay. He continues, and I'm able to focus more on what I'm wanting to do. And I've been doing that for the last few weeks, which I've really been so pleased about. So I can understand that contrast, just in that it's not a serious one, but for me, I just feel like I've really achieved. So that was my example of using that process that you gave us. I did do the bigger one with life balance, and then I thought, no, that's a little bit too big. I need to just start off smaller and just practice that process. And I really found it very valuable. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Meryl. That's wonderful. It's a great example, because I do personally believe that if you can work on those smaller things, which actually aren't that small, those bigger picture items like life balance will start to come into more and more alignment just naturally. But I'd like to talk about too of why your themes so you're doing that exercise perfectly. And I can see, looking at your themes, why you might have been pulled away from that love of reading, even by the non-productive application of your themes. So, you might have felt the responsibility to read for work. Like, I have this pressure that I want to learn more, and make sure I have enough information for my clients, the best information for my clients, the most up-to-date. And I would imagine that you probably, like you said, we're very selective through the individualization. Maybe we're drawn to reading things for clients rather than for yourself. And then the relator, there might have been a piece of it too that, if you and your husband were watching TV together, you were spending time together. So you've solved a lot of that using your themes productively. You're still with your husband, so you're still spending time, but now you're doing the reading that you want to do. You're still picking books that are going to teach you something and help you learn. So you didn't give that up, because you're right. If you're just reading beach reads that were not interesting to you and just merely relaxing, you probably would want to just chuck it after a couple of weeks. Like, oh, this isn't enough, But now you're picking, hopefully, the books for you, for your pleasure and your relaxation, but also stimulating, and meeting that responsibility that you've set for yourself. So it's just a way you can take that area of contrast where it might not have been working productively and just shift the lens a little bit. And there they all are again, but now they're working productively, and I hope it sounds like you're happier. And I absolutely believe in that kind of sort of more, I think, self-contained evening, because I think it leads to better rest, which leads to better life balance. So, there's a lot in that one. Thank you. That was great.
Yeah, I'd also just like to add that my sixth strength is competition. So the Goodreads is really good because I've already read 5 books already in 2 months. So that competition speak definitely comes into that.
That's excellent. I love it.
I want to say a couple of things. One, I'm going to periodically do this. I do this with everybody. But if someone refers to any of the 34 themes as a strength, I gently want to correct them to say they're not strengths, they're themes. So I do this, and I know it doesn't make me necessarily popular. I know that. And but if I'm really trying to teach people what a strength is, I have to make sure they don't think these are strengths. So that's one. 2, I learned something about my individualization. It's my number 2. And I wondered if you or Lauren have any thoughts on this. But as you were talking, it made me realize the person I most individualize is me. What do I want? What is the perfect book that I want to read right now? What is the perfect food I want to eat right now? And I'm just wondering if either of you experienced that. Just curious.
Well, we've both got Maximizer as well, so that's also interesting.
What's the best food I could be eating? What's the best book I could be reading?
I know and I don't know, this is like Maximizer and individualization, I think, playing together. I get off task very easily and like want to go do, oh, look at this really exciting thing over here. Oh, that data can wait to compile itself later. Or I know I love working on the things that I can make from good to great. And especially if it's somebody else involved, including myself, I always go that way.
Me too.
Yeah,
We're in this together.
Great. Yes. Well, I think that that's something you're going to find too. If you ever hear yourself saying, I should do something, likely that's a drag on your battery. And if you're like, oh, I want to do this, that's usually an indication it's easing over to the thriving range. So look for those subtle cues, because there's a lot of things we think we should do that you actually might not need to, especially those with responsibility, which we have a number in this class. Especially those, I'll say it again. Be careful of those.
Yep.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, over half the class.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good. What else? What else do you want to ask about? Or Felinda, where else do you want to take the conversation?
I'd love to open it up to some questions because I've done a lot of talking and there may have been more questions or more people that wanted to share examples.
Can I ask you guys, I've heard a couple of you talk about your themes that are beyond the top 5. So do you recommend that we get that full report? Or, I mean, my concern with that would be I personally would probably obsess over the bottom of the list and, and then think about, my number 6 and think, well, where do I really draw the line? Do I only focus on the top 5 themes or, I don't know how to take that.
It's a great question. And I purposely, even when I was working with clients and leading this, I waited about 3.5 years to unlock the 34 for just that reason. I wanted to solely focus on the top 5, and I knew that about myself too, that I'd be like, ooh, let's look what, 6, 7, and 8. And it's tricky because Gallup does not reveal the spread. So your number, maybe there's this huge gap between 5 and 6. Maybe there's only like 1 little percentage point. They don't tell you. And I think it's important, in my opinion, to get as comfortable with your top 5 as possible.
Okay.
I think if you never unlock the 34, it won't matter. It's something, it's fun to learn, and often you'll see, oh, well, number 6 and 7 and 8, and usually 1 through 10 really inform. oh, that also might be why I like to do this, or that, you know, mine is woo and Adam's is adaptability. I mean, we've seen a lot of things, but I personally really enjoyed not knowing those things and just trying to operate as optimally as possible for a while. So it is a personal choice, but be careful not to, if you do unlock the 34, just be careful not to overly worry about what's at the bottom. I'll give you an example, which I don't know if I talked about yet in this group. I have a friend, her number 34 is strategic. She was shocked to see that. She was like, I can't believe this. Almost like distraught a little bit. She's being a little dramatic, but she's like, how can this one be so low? Well, she functions just fine and does really well in her field and actually uses competition to do some of the things that look a lot like strategic in her work. She has focus, she has achiever, significance. You know, she's not missing out in any way by not having strategic. And in fact, the ways that I have seen it not show up for her are fairly minor. So, you know, just a thought. Some people really do get worried about what's at the bottom, but I don't think they should. So, does that answer your question? Because that is kind of you'll get that question a lot too.
Yeah.
You're working with people.
I've just been debating it, you know, and I'm a little annoyed that, you know, I have to pay so much more.
I know. Well, that's the other thing. I'm like, come on, Gallup. Because it is expensive to do it.
It used to be like $400 or $500 to unlock your full 34 until a couple of years ago. So you could buy a coaching session and then go through it. But I wanted to share like a little inside tip. On Gallup Strength Center website, where you log in and you can see your reports, and you'll see this one. It's called Strengths Insight Guide. Mm-hmm. Just I'll come back to that in just a second, but I want you to see the first report, the most basic and, you know, the first report, foundational report, is your signature themes report. Why do they call it they go from themes to then Strengths Insight Guide when it's going to be talking about the same themes? That's just a little side note. But in this report, it will give you clues as to other themes that might be in your top 5. So, for example, let's take individualization, because I know a couple other people have it. So if Meryl and Lauren were to look up individualization on their Insight Guide report, this report, the Insight report, their description for individualization would be different than mine.
Yeah.
So theirs wouldn't say these words on it. Excuse me. So if I read through this, I see conscious reasoning. Well, wait a minute. That's not individualization, but it's recognizing my intellection theme in my description of individualization. I will search for ways that people can use their talents to resolve issues. That tells me restorative might be a little higher than I would think about, because that's about resolving issues. In the process, they are likely to move closer to worthwhile goals. Maybe I have a little developer in me. So, and I'm just reading through this. This report will leave clues as to some other themes you might have.
Yeah, the reports on Gallup's website, you know, in your particular account are really important, and you actually get a copy of the ebook now, StrengthsFinder 2.0, which you used to have to buy and have the code and everything. So I would say the best, you know, just remember everybody has all 34. It's just a matter of order. Your top 5 are going to be your lead horses. Often they can't be separated. You know, you'll hear us say this a lot. It's like 5 fingers of your hand. You can't take one finger off and use it separately. Gotta, you know, they function together. You're going to see that actually a lot on your alignment meter. when you're in thriving, you're going to see like, oh, well, that got my input, my maximizer, my relator. That's why I felt so good. Or you're going to see like, ooh, that went against my input. That was an environment that my maximizer just felt stifled. That's why I was suffering. So you're going to see more than one almost every single time. But I do think you'll enjoy, I hope you enjoy the alignment meter worksheet. I found it personally to be very helpful in just kind of, illuminating some things I thought, oh, these are just my daily activities. Of course I know what I'm up to. Well, through this lens, there's some things that can be adjusted. Any other questions?
Yeah,
Belinda, sorry.
Yeah, Denise, Denise, did you have a follow-up before we move back to Meryl?
yeah. Just on the worksheet, and should that just be, should that be from when we start the day, like when I get up and I'm on the elliptical and I'm watching the Olympics on stream video? Okay.
Yeah, every little thing you can put on there will be informative.
Okay.
Meryl?
All right, I just wanted to say to Denise, I've been working with the Strengths Finder for 12, nearly 13 years. And the first time I did the full 34 was only when I became Gallup's certified as a coach. And I have to say that it didn't bother me before that. I had to do it because I was doing the course. And I just found that sometimes when you're working with your clients, it can be a little bit confusing. Having worked with the themes all the time, we're a lot more comfortable with each the 34 themes, but your client isn't. And I think sometimes it can be a little bit confusing when you take them right from the beginning to 34, when most of them can't even remember their top 5 to begin with. So, yeah, I don't think that it is that important. And when I did it and I realized I was also going to obsess about the bottom view, and I really had to talk myself out of it and concentrate on what I really am good at and not concern myself too much. That awareness, I guess, is good, because I couldn't understand why I couldn't tell stories like Lauren, and my communication is at 34. So I think it helped me to understand that actually that's not where, my talents lie. But I just manage it.
Thanks.
Often I will say, if somebody does unlock their 34, just recruit help for the bottom stuff. Don't work on it really. Just get someone to kind of help you with whatever those blind spots might be, because it just isn't usually worth your time. But I totally agree, Meryl, that the top 5 is already a lot for most people. And there's just such a specific learning curve. Even with those 5 and all the material you can apply and all the good you can gain from them, that it is already overwhelming. I totally agree.
As a follow-up to that, so I've taken the test twice, and people encouraged, if you've gone through a life event or if it's been a while, taking it again to see how the top 5 has shifted. And what I was told is that often you can get closer to your top 10 by taking it twice to see how they shuffle. But I will say it led to some identity crisis after taking it twice. So thoughts on that methodology?
Good question. You'll hear that one a lot. So they say that the first time's the most accurate. Kind of with any assessment, I think that's because you kind of like know what you want. I even have a friend that I feel like she wanted one of them, and I almost feel like she answered the questions to get that one in her top 5. I was laughing. Or my mother, who says that she thinks number 6 are all the other ones she doesn't have. But you will hear that, and I think that is very much about personal preference. So I personally don't want to take it again just because I've already learned, what I want to learn. And I know that the ones aren't going to go away. They're just going to shuffle around. But I do think that if you feel like you've gone through a big transition, or a couple decades have been passed, it's perfectly legitimate to do that. So I really think it comes down to personal preference ultimately. Just try not to worry too much, because those other ones didn't go very far. They're still there with you. They do say, I think, and I don't know, Adam, is this your idea, or is this something Gallup says? If you've taken the Strengths Quest, or when you're still in high school, they do recommend that you take it after you're out of college and working. That, in high school, even though the Strengths Quest is essentially the same thing, that's where you've had a lot of formative years, I guess. Is that?
Yeah, it could be both. I know my personal experience. I work with high school students, and then they go off to college, and then they come back and they tell me they took StrengthsFinder while in college, and sometimes their themes change, and sometimes it doesn't. And I've had to answer this question a lot, and I'll tell you the answer I settled on for this, because people will say, well, wait a minute, if my themes change, how valid and reliable is this instrument? And what I say to them is, if you answer the questions exactly the same way, both times, you will get exactly the same results. So if you got different results, it's because you answered the questions differently. Why did you answer the questions differently? I don't know. But that way they're not blaming StrengthsFinder, because there's some haters out there.
That's a good answer. I love that answer.
It is a good answer. I also have another person who works with, she says if you take it again and you get different results, she will count it as, say, your top 8 or your top 6. Like, she kind of acts like all of them are still your top, that your top results. So I like that one too.
Yeah, I do
feel
that.
like now I want my top 7.
You can have them.
Yeah. So that's what I kind of did. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So over the years, my clients also kept asking me the same question, and remembering that we only really had support from 2 years ago in South Africa. And so before that, I was really kind of on my own, and I had to figure things out for myself. So I thought, well, they kept asking me if I do it again, because the skeptics were there, will it change? So I said, well, I've actually done it every 2 years. I kind of redid it just to show them. And I said, all it's going to add is you're going to add on. So if 2 have dropped out and you've got 2 more, well, now you know what your top 7 are. And that's kind of how I managed it. And I still do. If people are really interested, they don't want to pay for the full 34, but they'd really like to. And I just say, I think that also you've got to really be careful that you don't manipulate it yourself, because I think a lot of people do. They have that theme envy, and then they think, okay, that's what I want to do now. And you can. Some people have got really good memories, because I have some clients that will remember all the questions after the first time they've taken it. And I'm thinking, how clever are these people that they can remember, and they start to analyze and come up with all of this. And I'm thinking, you're crazy.
It's scary sometimes.
Don't play poker with those people. They're counting cards.
Yes.
Let me just check in to see if there's any questions. And Kendra, I just wanted to invite you to see if you had any questions before we run out of time today.
I was wondering if you were going to share your chariot and horses image in a later session. I thought about that a few times as I was watching the video and in this discussion today.
That's great. I'll see if I can find it real quick.
That's a great comment, because I actually thought we should put that earlier. We are going to share it. We cover it a little bit when we have the coin model, but
I got it.
But it's so quickly, like, I just know there's this great visual to it. So I agree. I think we should bump it up.
Well, I'll share it right now. I want to do request. So
you do illustrations on request.
Yes. So here's kind of what it looks like, what our life is like before we, really learn our themes. Each, consider our 5 themes are these horses, and we're the person on the back wearing very form-fitting pants, I guess. But we're along for the ride, And so what we're trying to do as a result of Talent to Strength is help people really develop some mastery over their themes so that, you know, they go from sort of the image on the left to the image on the right, where you're in control of your themes. And so this process is something that we're going to be covering, if we haven't touched on it already, is our COIN model, is the process we take to help people go from first learning about their themes to developing them into mature themes. It's not that process itself isn't about going from talent to strength yet. We'll get to that, but COIN, our COIN model, is about going from raw themes to mature themes. And so COIN is an acronym for First Connect. As a strengths interventionist, if I can't help my clients connect to their themes, then anything else I do later won't really be as effective. So you're preparing the ground by helping them connect with their themes, or even helping them get over their skepticism around StrengthsFinder. You know, help them understand what is StrengthsFinder and why is it called StrengthsFinder if it doesn't tell us our strengths. I mean, it takes some work to do that, but I find most people are reasonable and they get it. And then once you connect, the O is observe, help them observe their themes, but you can't observe if you've never connected. And then after observe is interrupt. You have to be able to interrupt one of these horses if they're doing something that isn't working for you. And then the last phase is nuance, to develop and dial in the situationally appropriate intensity of your themes. That's the COIN model. We'll go through it. You didn't miss anything. We haven't covered it yet, but that's what we're really striving for. Kendra, did that? I don't know. Did I meet your request to show these? And did you want to have any questions or thoughts after that?
Yes, thank you for sharing that. That has always stuck with me since I saw it in your presentation a couple years ago. And I liked the cake analogy in the video too with the ingredients, but I thought that is helpful, a helpful visual for people to see. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah, good. Thanks.
Right, I think that's great. So I think we can wrap up unless anybody has anything else. The next week we meet, you'll watch the pre-session, well, the pre-session video, which is just the video. This will be posted on YouTube, the discussion video, the one we're in right now. And then fill out that worksheet and come prepared to share examples that you feel comfortable sharing. We'll talk that over, and also the content of the video.
Good. Yeah, we'll stick around if anybody has any questions, but and we still have a little bit of time if anybody does have questions, but yeah, we're letting you guys lead the way, so you can leave or ask us questions.
And thank you.
Going back to the test, I internally have had a lot of debate in my head with, is there any research on like the ideal point in time to take it? Because I feel like giving it to people too early, maybe they haven't had all the experiences. I know I took it at a place I was kind of stagnant in my career, and that was a really helpful time to kind of decide where I want to invest. And I can see a lot of value in different places. Is there any unified thought on that?
Well, first is don't do it on a first date. Don't like make them take the StrengthsFinder. Because I want to do that. You know what I mean? Like I want to be like, hey, before we go any further, let me just get a sense of, you know, what's going on in here. Okay, so that's not the perfect time. Other than that, yeah. Well, other than that, whenever somebody wants to take it, I think is the perfect time. There is no, that I'm aware of, I have not seen any research that said this is the ideal point in someone's life or career to take it. They do say, like, you know, if you're too young, like, you know, I work with high school students, so I give it to them, but I also know that they probably don't really know themselves as well as they could to answer the questions. So, you know, but I still think it's a great start.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you guys if you had any thoughts about the intervention stuff we talked about. We don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, but when I talked about the 3 rules of an interventionist and just that umbrella term of intervention, and then some of you might practice more as a coach or as a trainer or as a facilitator or as a manager or as a teacher or as a friend. I mean, this, I use this in my personal relationships to help me build relationships with people. So it's really this overall idea of being an interventionist. And then the 3 rules of being an interventionist that I live by, to provide accurate and relevant information, to offer free and informed choices, and to inspire commitment to those choices. And I just find that it always helps me stay true to what I'm supposed to do when I'm working with people. So I just wanted to see, we don't have to talk about it, but I just wanted to say that this is about strengths intervention. I wouldn't use that as like the name of the course for people that don't know our philosophy and our approach, because intervention is a very loaded term. But really what we want is for you to be effective strength interventionists. People may not even know you're being an interventionist with them. Sometimes I think that's a real sign of a strength, or high level intervention is like they don't even know it. When I first started getting into coaching, I would try to coach everybody, and everybody would be like, Adam, stop coaching me. And I'm like, darn it, you saw it. And so I try to be more stealthy about how I coach them. And I think I do pretty good now. But really, it is all about intervention. Intervention is helping people get to where they want to go. They're going somewhere and they can't understand why they're not getting the results they want or experiencing happiness. And so that's when I see this is a good time for an intervention, to help redirect to where they want to go. And StrengthsFinder is a beautiful tool for that. So I just want to see any thoughts or feedback on that. We don't have to talk about it. I just wanted to bring it up.
I really loved the parts where you said that to enter an existing set of circumstances with the purpose of creating greater alignment. That really resonated with me, and it gave me a lot to think about, and I loved that part of it. So thank you.
Awesome. Good, thank you. And that is absolutely at the core of what we do. We love StrengthsFinder, but that isn't the core of what we do. Alignment, individual environment fit. That is what we're about. So, I'm glad you're aligned with that too. And it's just what drives us and what keeps us moving forward. So I know Felinda's probably wrestling with her crazy dog right now. She's got a new puppy. So, but she's who I rely on to help make sure we have all the nuts and bolts sewed up, like that you guys know where to go next time. So I want to make sure, she's back. I
was checking on her, but she's quiet, so I came back.
Yeah. So
do we get to meet her?
Yes, you can. I'll go get her.
Next week, Paul, we want to see the puppy.
Yeah, we got to see the puppy.
I can go get her since we're on talk time.
Yeah, and if anybody, we call this talkie time. This is where, like, if anybody's like, I have to go, I don't have time for this, you can just go. It's fine. We won't get mad. And while we're waiting for Lucy to come back in, I call her Lucifer. Not Felinda, her dog is named Lucille. Although Felinda can be pretty, Luciferish sometimes. You'll never see it, but I will. Anyway, any other questions? Anything else that's on your mind, or any feedback or anything like that? Oh, well, forget all that. The show is going.
Oh my God. Oh, goodness gracious me. Hello.
Say something so we can make your image bigger. Like when you talk, it'll get big.
Okay, here's Lucy. She's just really good for our call today. Cute. She is a character and not usually this calm.
She's on top form.
Yes, she's been good for the camera.
Yay.
The sweetheart. Hello. We should all have our dogs on our laps.
I would love to see everybody's animals. Adam's dog will probably have to make an appearance.
Mine are fast asleep upstairs on the bed.
They don't let me bring mine to work, so.
Yeah. Well, I better take her out, so I'm going to mute.
All right. Well, Felinda, before you leave, can you just say if there's anything specifically for next time? And then we can.
Just the video to watch, the pre-session video, and the alignment meter worksheet to fill out. That's
Awesome.
all.
Yeah. All right. Bring your questions next time. We will see you. Really, really enjoying getting to know you and going over this. It's been a lot of fun. And we'll leave it there. And I'll still stick around for a minute or two. Felinda, go take care of Lucy. And anybody who has any questions, I'll answer them. Otherwise, you are free to go.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye,
You're
everyone.
welcome. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Adam, I just wanted to chat to you about that ladder.
The ladder, yes, the performance ladder.
Yes, I got a lot of insight from that, where you spoke about not having to always develop any of your themes into a strength.
Right.
That when you're competent in an activity.
Oh, wait, hold on. Yeah, I want to be clear. You don't turn your themes into a strength.
No,
Right.
the talents into the strength. So when we
You don't. Themes never are strengths. They never be like, that is a common thing I want to share. People think that like, okay, well, what is the relationship between a theme and a strength? And they think, oh, well, a strength is when you really have developed one of your themes, and then it becomes a strength. And that is right. A lot of people think that though. And I used to too. It sounds appealing, but no, a strength is always an activity.
yes.
Yes. Okay. So you can use your themes toward an activity to help strengthen your performance, just as you can use knowledge toward an activity to strengthen your performance, just as you can use skill toward an activity to strengthen your performance. All right. Now, with that understanding, go for it.
Yes, so that's what I was trying to say, is that activity, that we don't always have to make it into a strength.
No, that's a burden. That's impossible.
Yes,
Yeah.
well, my maximizer always wants to, so I'm always in big trouble with everything I do.
Yeah. So tell your maximizer.
I feel you, Meryl. I feel you.
Just say, it's not maximized to turn this into a strength. It wouldn't be maximized for me to spend time to get this thing that I'm pretty low at all the way up to here. What's maximized is to have someone else do it for me, or to trade out with somebody, or do the bare minimum, so that what I can really do is maximize the things that I am good at and increase my benefit from those and increase my exposure to those things that I'm already really good at. That's how maximizer should work, if it was really working the way a maximizer should. It would not be maximized to try to take something you're inept at and try to get it to a strength. That is not maximized. Right.
I was thinking more on the latter about what I know my identified weaknesses are, and being like, I'm okay staying at inept, and I shouldn't. I'm fine. I'm leaving it there. So I actually thought the latter was really helpful for me to being okay. And I like when last week you guys told us to really dig in and learn those 34 themes. I'm only at F, but like analytical.
Did you watch the song, the music video with the 34
I haven't, but I'm excited to. I'm waiting till I've gotten all the way through. Like when I read analytical, I'm like, this isn't me. This is never going to be me. And I'm okay with that.
Exactly. And I'll appreciate people that do have it, and I'll want to partner with them. But I like want to be totally clear with people. I no longer want to pretend that I'm good at something if I'm not. I want to be able to say, look, don't call on me for this. I was asked to join a national board of a nonprofit. And I said, okay, but here's the thing. If what you need is a fundraiser, that's not me. If what you need is somebody who loves financials, not me. If you want somebody who can help you think strategically and a sounding board and all that, I'm good at that. If you need perspective or big picture strategic thinking, I'm awesome at that. And so it takes a lot of pressure off me, you know? And then it frees me up to offer value where I love doing it. I'm open 24/7 to offer perspective. I could be like super tired and want to fall asleep, but if somebody comes to me and is like, I need help, and I need to see things more objectively or clearly or whatever, then I'm immediately perked up and energized. And that makes my life better when I can spend time doing the things I love to do, playing to my strengths. And I want that for everybody. Yeah. Any other thoughts, questions, ideas? All right. Then we'll see you next week. And of course, if you need anything in the meantime, feel free to reach out to Felinda or me.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody. Have a good week.
You too.
See you next week.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye-bye.